Good morning, I'm Aaron Heizer of Maker's Leather Supply, and today we're going to be talking about the Cobra Class 18 sewing machine. Now, the information that we're going to review about this machine can be applied to many different models of flatbed sewing machines because they're all generally the same as far as how they thread and what controls they have and how they operate. One of the best ways to understand a sewing machine is to understand how it really works and what magic is happening down there to create a lock stitch. And what is happening, I'll go real slow with the needle here. What is happening is that the needle goes down, and it goes through the leather, of course, and it goes down into the bobbin area. While it's down there, there's a shuttle hook that comes around, and it grabs that top thread, and it wraps that thread around the bobbin. And when it does that, grab these so it'll show how it picks it up. When it wraps it around the bobbin, it creates what's called the lock stitch, which is that it twists the two together. See that twist right there is where those two got wound up together. And basically it creates this in between your layers of leather. This would be my top thread, this would be my bobbin thread, and it creates just like that. And then when this take-up arm comes back up, it pulls that stitch up into the leather. And that way, when you look at a properly adjusted stitch, you see nothing but stitches on the top and nothing but stitches on the bottom without actually seeing that loop in there where they're wrapped around each other. So now I have a piece of scrap leather, and we're going to just sew a couple of stitches and show some basic operation of how the machine works. Now, just like hand stitching, you have to lock in your threads. So if you're doing a straight line stitch, let's say I'm just going from here to here, then you have to actually start out in reverse and then go forward after a couple of stitches, and that's what locks in that end so that they don't unravel. Same will happen at the very end. When I get to the end, I have to go backwards again, 2 or 3 stitches, and that'll lock in the other end. So I'll demonstrate that. I will hold down my threads with my finger here. I'm actually pushing on the reverse lever with my elbow. And that makes it to where I have both my hands over here where I need them. And we're going to start out in reverse and do a couple of stitches, and then we're going to go forward. This is a brand new machine, so it's got a lot of oil on it. When you do get a new machine or you've just oiled your machine, you want to really wipe down your presser feet to make sure you don't get oil all over your project. But we're just going to go a couple of inches here. And then when we get to the end of where we're stitching, we'll once again, while the needle is all the way down and then a little bit coming back up, we're going to hit that reverse lever again and do our back stitches. And that will complete a straight line stitch. Once we're done with our stitch and we've done our back stitch, you want to make sure that the take-up arm comes all the way up to complete that last stitch. And in just a moment, I'll show you what happens if we don't do that. But once you're done, then you can lift your presser foot, which will also put a little spacer in between your tensioning devices there. Then you can use your finger and pull a little bit of thread out, and then you can pull your project out right here. If you just go pulling your project out right here, even if you loosen your tension with your knee lift, what can happen is you can bend your needle because you're just pulling tension against your needle, and you don't want to do that. So I always advise to pull a little bit of thread out up here, then pull your project out. Okay, so now I'm going to run a real quick straight line stitch, but I'm going to show you what happens if I don't make sure that the take-up arm comes all the way back up to complete the last stitch. So I'll start out in reverse again. I'll hold my fingers down on my thread, do a couple of back stitches here, then I'm going to go forward with it. And then I'll go backward with it again. But then I'm not going to let the take-up arm come all the way back up. I'm just going to pull my needle out of the leather and see how low the take-up arm is down there. It has not pulled the last stitch up into the leather like it needs to. So when I go to pull my leather out, what you're going to find is a whole nest of threads coming out of your bobbin area. There's now 3 threads coming out of my bobbin area plus 1 thread on top. Now 2 of those threads down there are actually my top thread because I didn't complete the last stitch. This is one of the most common problems I see with new sewing machine owners. They don't understand why that happens, and it doesn't happen consistently because they're not paying attention to the take-up arm. Sometimes they stop and it happens to be up. Sometimes they stop and it happens to be down. So they don't understand why this is happening sometimes. So now we're going to talk about tension and how that works and why it's important. Okay? Now, these are properly adjusted stitches that I've shown so far. Okay, so you can't see the bobbin thread up on the top side, and you can't see the top thread down on the bottom side. And this is only about 5 ounces of leather, so that means this machine's pretty well dialed in if I can hide that knot in this thickness of leather. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and crank down on my top tension here, and it's actually pretty loose as it was. So generally, once you've got your tension set, a quarter of a turn is all you really need, but I'm trying to really make it very obvious what we're doing here, so I crank down on it quite a bit. And I'm going to sew along here. I can't see them yet. We'll crank down some more. All right. Now we've got a perfect example of what we're talking about. When you look at these stitches, you can see the bottom tension, or the bottom thread coming up through the top. So that means that either my bobbin is too loose or my top is too tight. My advice to new sewers is never adjust your bobbin tension unless you have to. Always just make your adjustments on the top. So right here I can see the bobbin thread on the top, so I need to loosen the top. If I could see the top thread on the bottom, then I would need to tighten the top. And again, small adjustments are usually all it needs. A quarter of a turn, maybe a half a turn. I did several turns on this one just to make sure that I got that pulled up there pretty tight. So what I'm going to do is back that tension back off, and then as you do, you back it off a little bit. You sew just 10 stitches or so. Don't just sew 2 or 3. Sew enough that you're pulling some thread through the machine. Then you can go back and look at your stitch. I still see just barely the bottom thread at the top there. So I'm going to adjust it a little more. And I'm going to sew a few more stitches. I'm going to make one more minor adjustment up here, and I think we'll be where we need to be. Okay. And now we're there. We've got properly adjusted stitches again where I can't see the bobbin thread on the top side of the project. So as I was adjusting my tension, it got pretty loose towards the bottom as well when I was playing with it. And you can actually even see a whole loop here of bobbin thread that shouldn't be. And now that it's properly tightened again, the threads look much better. So next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to take you through some basic sewing fundamentals, starting, stopping, going around a project, and doing corners and turns. We're going to go over a couple of basic fundamentals, how to go around a turn, how to go around a curve, starting and stopping, and going completely around a project instead of just a straight line stitch. We already discussed the straight line stitch and how you do your back stitches first and go down and then back stitch again at the end to lock them in. But if I'm going all the way around a project, I don't have to do that. I just start out going straight. When I get to a corner, I want to stop it with the needle. Just start that one over there with my hand wheel. I want the needle to go all the way down and then come back up just slightly, 1/4 of an inch or so. And what that's going to do, that will ensure that the shuttle hook has grabbed that top thread. And so now I can lift my presser foot and rotate my leather 90 degrees or whatever I want my turn to be. And then I lower my presser foot again and I can continue sewing. If you do not stop that needle in the proper position, you may get lucky and your stitches will be fine. But If that shuttle hook did not grab that thread and you twist the leather and pull that thread out of the way of the shuttle hook, then what's going to happen is you'll continue sewing and there will be a hole there, but there won't be a stitch in that hole. And you don't want to risk that. So we're going to continue sewing along. We're going to make a square so that we can get back to our starting position here. Okay, so once again, I'm going to go all the way down with the needle, come back up just a little bit, lift my presser foot, turn my 90-degree turn, and keep stitching. Okay, we're going to do it one more time. Well, two more times. Okay, needle back up a little bit, turn my project, keep stitching. And then once I'm about lined up with my beginning stitch there, about one more stitch, there we go. Once I'm back to that point, I'm going to do it one more time, and then I'm just going to sew back down to that original stitch. Now, we are just one stitch shy of being back in the very first stitch hole. So I'm actually going to use my hand wheel now, and I'm going to take it until the needle is almost back down into the leather, and lift my presser foot so I can see, and make sure that I place that needle right back into that first hole. And when I do that, as I sew my next couple of stitches, that'll lock in the original stitch, or the entire stitch, I guess you could say, and it's going to exactly follow the first stitches, so I don't have staggered stitches. These are just laying right on top of the others. So now that I'm done, I'm going to rotate my hand wheel until my take-up arm is all the way up. I'm going to lift my presser foot, pull my extra thread out up here, and there we go. We sewed a rectangle, and we came back and we locked our stitches in. The next thing we're going to talk about is going around a curve. We sometimes have to go around the end of a belt or something like that that has a curve, and we're just going to sew around it. So we'll pretend this is an end of a belt. We've sewn all the way up to this point, and now we're just stitching along, and we're making sure that our needle follows the path that it needs to follow. And as we get to the curve, if I'm sewing slowly, I just need to make sure that all these minor turns are done while the needle is down in the leather. If the needle is not down in the leather and I make a turn like this, what will happen is my stitches will become unevenly lengthed. There will be long ones, there will be short ones, there will be some that are off the path. Everything runs so much smoother when you do it with the needle, do all your turns with the needle down in the leather. Now, I'm going to haphazardly just kind of do this with... There we go. And we'll compare those two turns. So here, all the stitches are exactly the same length and they follow a nice path. But then when I just kind of started turning it, we've got longer stitches and we've got shorter stitches, and it just doesn't look as nice and even, and definitely not as professional. I've got one more little trick that I can show you that when I teach this in my live classes, people really comment that if they learned nothing else that day, that was the one thing they're really going to take away. Hopefully they did learn more than that, but you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all the way up to the edge of this piece of leather. Now, we're at a point that, let's say if we went one more full stitch, then we'll have gone too far. But if we don't go another stitch, then we won't have gone far enough. So we need to make a half stitch or a quarter stitch or whatever the measurement may be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and get it to where it has gone all the way up and then almost touching the leather again. And I'm going to very slightly raise my knee lift just enough to take some of the pressure off the leather. Okay, and then when I push my reverse lever, you can see where it actually moves the needle back and forth over the leather. So what I can do is I'll have gone too far if I place the needle all the way down in the leather here. So I'll press the reverse lever just a little bit, get the needle right where I want it, and then by engaging the machine again, I can complete that stitch. Now I can let go of the reverse lever and continue my corner just as I intended in the beginning and keep sewing all the way around. When we bring this back, we'll show the little stitch that we made in that area. The stitching line comes down. We had to do a partial stitch right here and then go on. And even though that stitch is a little bit shorter than the others, it's perfectly in line with the others and it still fits the flow of the project. Now let's put all this shit to use and make a bag.